The emergency session of the Galactic Council was not going well. Then again, when you're discussing a creature that has successfully killed 3 entire planetary defense fleets, eaten a small moon, and apparently finds starship hull plating delicious, things rarely go well. Director Thornback clicked his primary claws against the obsidian table, a nervous habit he'd developed over his 200 years of service. The holographic display floating above them showed what little footage existed of the Void Serpent before it destroyed the cameras, and the cameramen, and the planet they were standing on. 47 attempts, announced Commander Steelridge, her metallic voice echoing through the chamber. 47 sanctioned extermination operations across 12 stellar cycles. Nuclear bombardment, biological weapons, reality anchors, that experimental black hole generator the Kronax built. Nothing worked. The creature adapted to everything, and I do mean everything. A junior representative from the Palax Consortium raised a tentacle. Surely we could simply avoid the sectors it inhabits and wait for natural causes to… It doesn't age, Thornback interrupted flatly. Doesn't eat, technically. Doesn't sleep. Exists partially outside our dimensional space. The science team believes it might predate our current universe. Also, it started moving toward populated sectors. We have maybe 6 lunar cycles before it reaches the Zenith colonies. The chamber fell silent except for the gentle hum of life support systems and someone's nervous breathing apparatus. There is, Thornback continued, mandibles twitching with distaste, one option we haven't tried. The humans have a wildlife consultant, Jake Reynolds. Apparently he has a certain reputation for handling impossible xenofauna. The one who domesticated the nightmare swarms of Kepler 442. Someone asked. The same one who got banned from the Parliament of Andromeda for quote-unquote ruining their sacred predator's mystique, Thornback confirmed. He turned their divine beast of judgment into a therapy animal. They're still furious. He sounds perfect, said Steelridge. He sounds insane, countered Thornback. Those aren't mutually exclusive qualifications, Steelridge replied. Besides, what's he going to do? Make it worse? The thing is classified as a planet killer, an extinction event with scales. We're out of options, Director. Thornback's claws clicked faster. He hated when Steelridge was right. Fine, send the contract. But when this human shows up and gets himself killed in the first 5 minutes, I'm putting it in everyone's file that I objected. 3 days later, Jake Reynolds would swagger into that same chamber wearing cargo shorts, eating what appeared to be a sandwich, and immediately ask if anyone had a beer. Thornback's claws would click so fast they'd nearly spark. Jake Reynolds strolled into the Galactic Council's war room like he was attending a barbecue, not a briefing about an unkillable cosmic horror. His Hawaiian shirt featuring what appeared to be earth palm trees and surfboards clashed magnificently with the sleek, serious architecture of the chamber. So, he said, dropping his duffel bag on the tactical display table, which immediately sparked and flickered. Which one of you is Thornback? I'm picturing someone who looks perpetually constipated. Ah, there you are. Thornback's eye stalks retracted slightly. Mr. Reynolds, we appreciate your… Jake. Nobody calls me Mr. Reynolds except my parole officer, and that relationship is complicated. He pulled out a datapad and squinted at it. Okay, so you've got a big angry space noodle that won't die. Classified as, quote, unkillable, unquote. Have you tried asking it nicely to leave? The room fell silent. That was a joke, Jake clarified. You know, humor? To lighten the mood before we discuss the apocalypse beast? Commander Steelridge's optical sensors brightened with what might have been amusement. Mr. Reynolds. Jake, are you aware this creature has a 100% fatality rate for anything that approaches it? Had a 100% fatality rate, Jake corrected, pulling out his sandwich again. Past tense. Because I'm about to ruin its perfect record. He took a bite. This is good, by the way. You guys have excellent cafeteria standards. A nervous-looking alien with too many eyes and not enough confidence shuffled forward. Jake, I'm Pip, junior xenobiologist. I've been assigned as your handler, your liaison. Your, keeper of the official records and my babysitter, Jake finished. Cool. Try to keep up, Pip. I move fast and ignore most safety protocols. Pip's eyes blinked in sequence, which Jake would later learn meant profound anxiety. Thornback pulled up a holographic display. Reynolds, Jake, whatever you prefer. This is not a joke. This creature has obliterated military forces that could level continents. We need to know your plan before we authorize any approach. Jake studied the rotating image of the Void Serpent, a massive, undulating horror that seemed to exist in too many dimensions at once, with scales that absorbed light and eyes that definitely knew things mortals shouldn't. Yeah, that's a big boy, Jake said appreciatively. Okay, here's what I need. 12 pounds of selenium composite, an industrial-grade sonic emitter, 3,000 feet of quantum-locked cable, and a really good set of heat-resistant gloves. The military advisor, General Kretsch, leaned forward. A weapons system? Nope. Containment field? Nah. Then what? Also, I need 17 kilos of that synthetic meat substitute you serve in the cafeteria, a beach ball, and someone who can fabricate a really large harness. Custom fitted. I'll send measurements once I get a look at the thing. Every eye, sensor, and visual organ in the room focused on Jake. You're planning to leash. It, Thornback said slowly, his voice the audio equivalent of a migraine. Well, not immediately, Jake replied. That would be irresponsible. First, I need to establish trust and behavioral boundaries. It's not a pet, Thornback said. Not yet, Jake agreed cheerfully. Pip made a sound like a deflating balloon. This was going to be a very long assignment. The incident at Andromeda, Steelridge interjected. The one that got you banned. What exactly did you do? Jake grinned. Their sacred beast of eternal judgment was just anxious and understimulated. Turned out it loved fetch. They didn't appreciate me throwing sticks during their ceremonial trials. Apparently ruined like 1,000 years of religious tradition. In my defense, the beast was much happier afterward. You're insane, Thornback stated. I prefer creatively unorthodox, Jake said. So, we doing this or not? Because that thing is heading toward populated space, and I've got a 3-week turnaround guaranteed in my contract, which you signed. I checked. Thornback's claws clicked like a machine gun. Fine, but when you die horribly, I'm not filing the paperwork. Deal, Jake said, finishing his sandwich. Pip, grab the shopping list. We've got an unkillable monster to go disappoint. The strategy briefing lasted 4 excruciating hours, during which Jake doodled on his datapad, asked if anyone wanted to order pizza, and fell asleep twice. When General Kretsch finally asked him to present his tactical approach, Jake stood up, stretched, and said, I'm going to walk up to it and see what happens. The silence that followed could have suffocated a star. Elaborate, Thornback demanded, his claws frozen mid-click. Not much to elaborate on, Jake shrugged. I go to where it is. I approach it. I assess its behavioral patterns and stress responses. Then I adapt accordingly. You know, standard fieldwork. Standard fieldwork. Pip repeated faintly, his eyes blinking in what Jake now recognized as pure. Existential dread involves observation from a safe distance with proper containment protocols and backup extraction teams, and that's why standard fieldwork has a 47 failure success rate with this particular case, Jake interrupted. Look, you've been treating this thing like a military target. All aggression, all containment theory, all force projection. Has it occurred to anyone that maybe that's exactly why it keeps killing everything that gets near it? It's a predator, Steelridge said. An apex predator from outside our dimensional reality. What else would we treat it as? A really big animal with really big feelings, Jake replied. He pulled up his datapad, showing his actual notes, which, disturbingly, were quite detailed. Look at the attack patterns. It doesn't hunt. It doesn't stalk prey. It only attacks when approached by armed forces, or when something enters what it perceives as its territory. Defensive aggression, not predatory behavior. It ate a moon, Thornback reminded him. A uninhabited moon in its territory, Jake countered. And your reports say it absorbed it, not ate it. Different thing. My theory? You've got a scared, lonely, interdimensional being that's been under constant military assault for over a decade. It's not unkillable. It's just really, really good at not dying because you keep trying to murder it. General Kretsch's tactical display lit up with red warning indicators. And your solution is to walk up to it unarmed and unprotected? I didn't say unarmed. Jake held up his lunch cooler. I've got sandwiches, and that selenium composite I ordered. And my winning personality. The selenium is for what, exactly? Pip asked, desperately trying to find some logic in this disaster. Trade secret, Jake said. But if I'm right, it's going to be real interested in it. Selenium signatures are rare outside certain stellar formations, and based on your dimensional analysis, this thing comes from a region that was lousy with the stuff. Might trigger some positive nostalgia associations. You're basing an approach to the most dangerous entity in known space on nostalgia, Thornback said flatly. I'm basing it on xenopsychology and comparative behavioral analysis across 43 different apex predator species. But sure, we can call it nostalgia if it makes you feel better. The surveillance team had set up a live feed, because apparently everyone wanted to watch Jake die in real time. Commander Steelridge insisted it would be valuable data for the next attempt. Jake insisted they were just morbidly curious. Both were correct. As Jake loaded his supplies into a transport shuttle, Pip had been ordered to accompany him to the planet's surface, but no closer. The junior xenobiologist finally worked up the courage to ask the question everyone wanted answered. Jake, why do you do this? These suicide missions with creatures that everyone else has given up on. Jake paused at the shuttle door, his another expression unusually serious for a moment. Because everyone else treats them like monsters. And yeah, sometimes they are. But sometimes they're just really weird animals that nobody's bothered to understand. And somebody should try, you know? Before we just blow them up and call it a day. That's almost noble, Pip said. Don't spread that around, Jake replied, grinning again. Ruins my reputation. Now come on, we've got a planetary perimeter to breach, and a whole lot of people betting on my imminent death. Let's go disappoint them. The shuttle launched toward the dead zone, where the void serpent made its lair in the ruins of a shattered colony. Every sensor in the sector tracked their approach. The council watched. The military watched. Somewhere, presumably, the void serpent itself watched. And Jake Reynolds, wearing cargo shorts and carrying a cooler full of sandwiches, prepared to have the worst or best day of his career. Pip was already composing his resignation letter in his head. The landing site was a graveyard of previous attempts. Scorched earth from plasma bombardments, twisted metal from failed containment devices, and what looked like the frozen remains of a reality anchor that had been tied into a decorative knot. The void serpent had a flair for the dramatic, apparently. Okay, Pip, you stay here with the shuttle, Jake said, hefting his cooler and the selenium composite container. Keep the live feed running. If I die, make sure to get my good side. Which side is your good side? Pip asked weakly. Haven't died enough times to figure that out yet. Jake checked his equipment one last time. Oh, and if this works, do not send in a rescue team. That would be counterproductive and probably fatal. If what works, you still haven't explained your actual plan. But Jake was already walking toward the massive cave system where the serpent had made its lair, whistling something that sounded suspiciously like a Earth cartoon theme song. The council watched through Pip's enhanced sensor array. Thornback's claws were clicking so fast they'd worn a groove in his chair's armrest. Jake approached the cave entrance and stopped about 50 feet away. He set down his cooler, opened it, and pulled out a sandwich. Then he sat down cross-legged on a rock and started eating. What is he doing? General Kretsch demanded. Having lunch, Steelridge observed. Tactically. 20 minutes passed. Jake finished his sandwich, pulled out another, and started on that one too. He appeared to be completely relaxed, occasionally checking his datapad like he was reading the news. Then the temperature dropped 40 degrees in 3 seconds. The void serpent emerged from the cave like reality itself was being unzipped. It was worse than the holographic recordings suggested. Massive, serpentine, covered in scales that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Its eyes, there were too many of them, glowed with light that made cameras glitch and sensors scream. Space bent around it. Time felt negotiable in its presence. It looked at Jake. Jake looked at it, chewed his sandwich, and swallowed. Hey there, big guy. You look tense. Rough decade? The serpent's multidimensional presence expanded, a clear threat display that had preceded the obliteration of entire fleets. Jake didn't move. Yeah, I'd be cranky too if people kept shooting nukes at me. That's gotta be annoying. Loud too, I bet. The serpent moved closer, its body defying several laws of physics in the process. It opened a mouth that contained what looked like a collapsing star and multiple rows of teeth that existed in states of quantum uncertainty. So here's the thing, Jake continued conversationally, still sitting. I think you and the council have gotten off on the wrong foot. Well, wrong appendage. You don't have feet. They don't have feet. Interspecies relations are complicated. The serpent's head, which was roughly the size of Jake's shuttle, lowered until it was 10 feet away. Its breath smelled like ozone and cosmic radiation. Jake held up the selenium composite. Brought you something. Thought you might be homesick. This is from a stellar remnant with similar dimensional properties to your probable origin point. At least, that's what the xenogeologists think. I say probable because nobody actually knows where you came from, but the selenium signature in your scale composition suggests. The serpent sniffed the composite. Then it made a sound that was somewhere between a whale song and a dimension collapsing but softer. Quieter. Yeah, thought so. Jake said gently. Long way from home, aren't you? Quieter. Back at the shuttle, Pip was frantically recording everything while simultaneously preparing to flee for his life. This is impossible. The aggression response should have triggered. The territorial defense should have. Why isn't it killing him? On the council feed, no one had an answer. Steelridge leaned forward, optical sensors at maximum magnification. The void serpent lowered its massive head further, until it was almost touching Jake. Up close, they could see its scales shifting through colors that didn't have names, patterns that hurt to perceive. Jake slowly reached out and placed his hand on what might have been the serpent's snout. You're not a monster, he said quietly. You're just lost and everyone's been mean to you. That's gonna change now, okay? No more nukes, no more black hole generators, no more military fleets. Just you and me figuring this out. The serpent made that sound again, softer still, almost questioning. Yeah, buddy. I know. Jake stood up slowly, keeping his hand on the creature's scales. Tell you what, how about we start with some basic enrichment activities? You ever play fetch? No, probably not. That's more of a Earth thing. But I bet we can find something you'd like. He pulled out the beach ball. The massive, interdimensional horror that had destroyed fleets and eaten a moon watched with apparent fascination as Jake inflated it. This is gonna sound stupid, Jake said, but I think you're bored and lonely. And you've been in fight or flight mode for so long you forgot there were other options. He tossed the ball gently. The void serpent tracked it with all of its eyes, its massive head following the arc. The ball bounced off its snout. The serpent blinked all of its eyes, in sequence. Then it gently nudged the ball back toward Jake with its nose. Oh, you absolute sweetheart, Jake laughed. Yeah, we're gonna be friends. In the council chamber, Thornback's claws had stopped clicking entirely. His mandibles hung open in an expression that none of his species had evolved to make, because the situation had never occurred in their evolutionary history. He's playing fetch, Steelridge said, her voice processor crackling with what might have been disbelief. With the unkillable apocalypse beast. Not unkillable. Jake's voice came through the comm system as he tossed the ball again. Just misunderstood. Right, Noodle? He named it Noodle. Pip whispered into the recording. For the scientific record, the human has named the interdimensional horror Noodle. The void serpent. Noodle caught the ball in its mouth this time, careful not to destroy it, and brought it back to Jake with something that almost looked like pride. Good boy, Jake said. Now let's talk about you coming back to meet my friends. They're going to apologize for the whole nuclear bombardment thing, and then we're going to get you set up somewhere nice where you can stretch out and not be bothered. Sound good? Noodle made a sound that translated roughly to agreement, if agreement could warp space-time slightly. Excellent, Jake said, pulling out the harness specifications on his datapad. Now I know this next part is going to seem weird, but I need to take some measurements. The council chamber had been hastily reinforced with every defensive system the galactic military could install on 4 hours' notice. Force fields hummed at maximum capacity. Reality anchors lined the walls. Emergency evacuation protocols were on standby. 3 different fleets waited in nearby sectors, just in case. None of it would matter if the void serpent decided to get cranky, but it made everyone feel slightly better about their impending doom. Thornback stood at the center of the chamber, his claws clicking a rhythm that sounded suspiciously like a funeral march. Tell me again why we're allowing this. Because Jake Reynolds somehow convinced the unkillable space monster to follow him home like a stray cat, Steelridge replied, her sensors focused on the approaching shuttle signatures. And because the alternative is telling him no, which I suspect would go poorly. It's been 3 days, General Kretsch muttered, checking the tactical displays for the 100th time. 3 days, and he's managed to do what our best xenobiologists, military strategists, and dimensional physicists couldn't do in 12 years. I hate him, Thornback stated matter-of-factly. I want that on the record. I officially hate Jake Reynolds. Noted, Pip's voice crackled through the comm system. For the record, I'd like to submit my resignation effective immediately. But Jake says I can't quit until after we land, because it would be, quote, really awkward timing, unquote. Pip, what's your current status? Steelridge asked, terrified, also possibly experiencing a mental breakdown. The creature Noodle has been following our shuttle for 3 days. Jake's been teaching it tricks. Director Thornback, it can roll over. The interdimensional horror can roll over. I've documented everything, but I'm not sure my scientific credentials will survive publishing this data. The main viewport activated, showing the approach vector. The Council shuttle came into view first, flying at a leisurely pace. Behind it, moving with an almost playful undulation, came the Void Serpent. Around its massive neck was a harness custom fabricated, glowing with quantum-locked containment fields that were somehow completely unnecessary because the creature was just following Jake voluntarily. "Sweet, merciful Void," someone whispered. The shuttle landed on the primary platform. The Void Serpent coiled itself in the designated landing zone, which had previously been a military staging area, and waited. Its multi-dimensional presence still bent reality around it, still made sensors glitch and cameras struggle. But there was something different now, something almost calm in its posture. The shuttle door opened. Jake walked out first, still wearing his cargo shorts, now with a Hawaiian shirt that somehow looked even more aggressively casual than the first one. He carried a datapad in one hand and what appeared to be a sandwich in the other. Pip emerged behind him, looking like he'd aged several decades in 3 days. His eyes blinked in patterns that suggested he'd transcended anxiety and achieved some kind of enlightened terror state. "Hey everyone," Jake called out cheerfully, waving his sandwich at the assembled council members who were watching through reinforced observation windows. "Hope you don't mind, I brought a +1. Noodle lifted its massive head and made that sound again, the soft, dimension-bending rumble that was apparently its version of a friendly greeting. Alarms immediately started blaring. Half the council members bolted for the exits. Emergency protocols activated. Somewhere, a military AI started calculating extinction-level threat responses. "Stand down," Jake said firmly into his comm unit. "Seriously, stand down. He's friendly." "Well, he's not going to kill anyone unless you shoot at him first, which I strongly advise against because that would undo 3 days of behavioral conditioning and also really hurt his feelings." "His feelings," Thornback repeated, stepping into the observation bay with what could only be described as suicidal courage, or possibly a complete mental break. "The planet-killing cosmic horror has feelings that can be hurt. Every sentient creature has feelings, Director. That's kind of the point I've been making." Jake walked closer to the observation window, and Noodle's massive head followed, staying a respectful distance behind him. "Look, I know this seems insane. Trust me, I get it. But here's what I figured out over the past 3 days. He pulled up his datapad, projecting his findings onto the Council's display systems. Detailed behavioral analyses, dimensional energy readings, comparative xenopsychology charts that actually made sense. Noodle here isn't from our dimensional space. We knew that. What we didn't know is that he's not actually aggressive by nature. He's defensive. Everything you classified as attacks, those were panic responses. He got pulled into our reality about 15 years ago, through some kind of dimensional rupture near the Helix Nebula. Doesn't know how to get home. Can't communicate in any way our equipment could detect, so every time someone approached, he thought they were threatening him. The destroyed fleets, General Kretsch started. "We're shooting at him," Jake interrupted. "Yeah," he defended himself. "Wouldn't you? Imagine being ripped from your home dimension, thrown into a reality where nothing makes sense, and then having everyone you meet try to kill you for over a decade. You'd be pretty irritable too." Steelridge's optical sensors focused on the data. "These energy signatures. You're saying he's been trying to return home this entire time?" "Yep. That's what the moon absorption was about. He wasn't eating it, he was harvesting dimensional energy, trying to build up enough power to tear open a rift back to his origin point. Didn't work, obviously, which just made him more desperate and more defensive." Pip had found his scientific voice again, apparently. "The selenium composite. You used it as a psychological anchor. A familiar stimulus from his home dimension to establish trust and reduce his stress response." "Gold star for Pip," Jake said. "Yeah, exactly." Once he realized I wasn't there to hurt him, he calmed down real fast. Turns out he's actually pretty sweet. A bit needy, honestly. Separation anxiety issues. But we're working on it. Thornback's claws had started clicking again, slower now, more thoughtful. "And the harness? Oh, that's just for show, really. Makes everyone feel better. The quantum locks could maybe hold him for about 6 seconds if he really wanted to leave, but he's not going anywhere. Are you, buddy?" Noodle made an affectionate rumbling sound and gently bumped his head against the reinforced wall near Jake. The entire structure shook. Several council members screamed. "Careful, Noodle," Jake said, Inside voice. We talked about this. The creature's rumble quieted immediately. You trained it, Steelridge said, her voice processor struggling with the concept. In 3 days, you domesticated an interdimensional apex predator that's existed for possibly millions of years. I prefer the term socialized, Jake corrected. And he's not a pet, he's a partner. There's a difference. Which brings me to why we're here. Noodle needs a home, somewhere he can exist without people freaking out or shooting at him. I'm thinking one of the uninhabited dimensional pocket systems would work. Plenty of space, compatible energy signatures, and far enough from populated areas that he won't accidentally scare anyone. You want us to give the apocalypse beast his own private dimension, Thornback said. I want you to give a displaced, lonely creature a safe place to exist where he's not under constant threat, Jake replied. Yes, that's exactly what I want. And, in exchange, he's agreed to help with some scientific research. Turns out, his natural ability to manipulate dimensional boundaries could be really useful for our understanding of multiversal physics. Pip's already got 17 research proposals drafted. Pip nodded frantically. The potential applications are extraordinary. If we can study his dimensional manipulation safely, it could revolutionize our understanding of reality itself. Also, he's surprisingly gentle during examinations. Much easier to work with than most apex predators. He let you examine him? General Kretsch asked incredulously. Jake asked him nicely, Pip said, as if this explained everything, and offered him more selenium composite as a reward. Positive reinforcement behavioral conditioning. It's basic xenopsychology, really, except usually we don't apply it to creatures that can unmake reality. Jake pulled out what looked like a protein bar from his pocket and tossed it toward Noodle. The massive creature caught it delicately in its mouth, its quantum uncertain teeth somehow managing not to destroy it. Good boy, Jake said. Then he turned back to the council. So, do we have a deal? Noodle gets his pocket dimension, you get groundbreaking research opportunities, and you don't have to worry about him eating any more moons. Everyone wins. The council chamber was silent, except for the hum of defensive systems that were still active despite being completely pointless. Finally, Thornback's claws clicked once, twice. Then he sighed a sound that translated across species as the universal language of defeat. Fine. Reynolds, you win. We'll establish a dimensional habitat. We'll fund the research. We'll even officially classify the creature as, quote, a sentient partner in xenobiological studies, unquote, instead of a planet-killing threat. Are you satisfied? Oh, one more thing, Jake said, his official designation. For the records. It's already classified as the Void Serpent, General Kretsch said. Yeah, that's terrible. Too scary. His official name is Noodle, capital N, and his legal classification is Emotional Support Apocalypse. Beast. Absolutely not, Thornback said. Already filed the paperwork, Jake replied, showing his datapad. Pip helped. It's legally binding. Pip looked sheepish. He was very persuasive. Also, Noodle seemed to prefer the name. Thornback stared at Jake for a long moment, then at Noodle, who was now playfully swaying his massive head back and forth, looking for all the universe like a cosmic horror that just wanted some attention and maybe another protein bar. I really truly hate you, Jake Reynolds, Thornback said. I get that a lot, Jake replied cheerfully. But you'll get over it, especially when Noodle's research contributions start rolling in. Trust me, you're gonna love having him around. Everyone does eventually. Right, Noodle? Noodle rumbled happily, causing minor space-time distortions that made the lights flicker. Inside voice, Jake reminded him gently. And the most feared creature in known space quieted down like a scolded puppy. 3 weeks later, the Galactic Council was still dealing with the administrative nightmare that was Jake Reynolds' success. The paperwork alone had crashed 2 separate bureaucratic AI systems. There were forms for establishing dimensional habitats, forms for reclassifying extinction-level threats as research partners, forms for registering emotional support, apocalypse beasts, a category that hadn't existed until Jake invented it, and approximately 17,000 forms related to the fact that someone had finally, successfully, impossibly solved the Void Serpent problem by making friends with it. Thornback sat in his office, staring at the mountain of legal documents that required his authorization. His claws had worn completely through the armrest of his chair. He was going to need a new chair. He was also going to need a vacation, several strong drinks, and possibly a complete memory wipe. Director? His assistant poked their head through the door. The researchers at the Dimensional Habitat are requesting additional selenium composite shipments. Apparently Noodle has been, quote, an absolute sweetheart during testing, unquote, and they want to reward his cooperation. Approved, Thornback said automatically. Anything else? The Parliament of Andromeda has filed a formal complaint. They've heard about Jake's success, and they're demanding he be barred from ever entering their space again. Apparently they're worried he'll, quote, ruin another perfectly good divine monster, unquote. Denied. Their religious trauma is not our problem. Thornback signed off on another form. Next. 17 planetary governments have submitted requests for Jake's services. There's a murder hornet situation on Kepler 88c, something called a reality shredder near the Horsehead Nebula, and a creature on Tau Ceti IV that keeps eating starships and apparently can't be killed by conventional means. Thornback's claws stopped mid-click. How many of these requests use the phrase, can't be killed? 14 of them, sir. Of course they do. Thornback pulled up the communications array. Get me Reynolds. The holo display flickered to life, showing Jake sitting on what appeared to be a beach chair in the middle of Noodle's dimensional habitat. The massive creature was coiled peacefully in the background, apparently napping. Somehow Jake had managed to set up what looked like a full camping arrangement, complete with a portable grill. Hey, Director, Jake said, not bothering to stand. What's up? You have 17 job offers, Thornback said flatly. 14 involve creatures previously classified as unkillable. Cool, I'm not taking any of them. Thornback's eye stalks retracted in surprise. Excuse me? I said I'm not taking them. I'm on sabbatical. Noodle and I are bonding. It's important for his psychological development. We're working through his abandonment issues. In the background, Noodle made a contented rumbling sound that caused the holo display to flicker. Reynolds, these governments are offering substantial compensation. The Kepler 88c situation alone has a bounty of 5 million galactic credits. Don't care. I'm busy teaching Noodle how to play frisbee. Do you know how hard it is to find a frisbee that can survive dimensional distortion fields? Very hard. I had to special order it. You're teaching an interdimensional apex predator to play frisbee. He's getting pretty good at it. Watch this. Jake stood up and threw something that looked like a frisbee but glowed with the same quantum-locked energy as Noodle's harness. The massive creature's head shot up, tracked the disc, and caught it gently in his mouth before bringing it back to Jake. Good boy, yes you are. Who's a good cosmic horror? You are. Thornback felt something inside his mind break just a little bit more. Besides, Jake continued, scratching Noodle behind what might have been an ear. I'm working on my methodology documentation. Pip's helping. We're going to publish a paper on non-violent apex predator management. Should be groundbreaking. Might revolutionize the whole field. You're going to explain your methods, Thornback said slowly. The methods you've consistently refused to detail in any of your previous contracts. Well, yeah, sort of. I mean, the paper's going to be pretty technical. Lots of xenopsychology theory, behavioral conditioning frameworks, dimensional energy psychology. The actual practical application requires a certain, let's say, personality type, and a complete disregard for self-preservation instincts. So it's not like everyone's going to be able to replicate it. So you're writing a paper that explains your process in a way that's technically accurate but practically useless for anyone who isn't. You. Exactly, Jake grinned. Glad you understand. Pip's handling all the actual science parts. I'm mostly just providing anecdotes and making sure the jokes land. A notification pinged on Thornback's display. He glanced at it and felt his claws begin their stress-clicking rhythm again. There's another situation, he said quietly. The Terminus sector. Something's appeared there. The initial reports are calling it the Devourer of Stars. It's already consumed 3 solar systems. Completely. Just gone. The galactic military has classified it as an existential threat to all sentient life. Jake's expression became more serious. Casualties? Evacuations were successful. No life lost yet. But the rate of consumption is accelerating. Projections suggest it could reach core worlds within 6 months. Tactical assessments? Every military strategist we have agrees it's impossible to stop. The energy requirements alone make it functionally invincible. Nothing we have can even slow it down. Jake was quiet for a moment, studying something on his own datapad. Noodle moved closer, as if sensing his friend's change in mood, and gently rested his massive head near Jake's shoulder. Send me everything you've got, Jake finally said. Full sensor logs, energy signatures, behavioral patterns, attack vectors, everything. You just said you were on sabbatical. Yeah, well, sabbatical's over if there's an actual existential threat. Noodle and I can finish our bonding time later. Right, buddy? Noodle rumbled in what sounded like agreement. Reynolds. This thing makes the Void Serpent look like a minor inconvenience. Every simulation we've run suggests total galactic extinction within a year if it's not stopped. Cool. Sounds like a challenge. Jake started packing up his camping gear with practiced efficiency. I'll need Pip for research support. Also bump my standard fee by 40%. Existential threats cost extra. Done. But Jake. Thornback hesitated, which wasn't something he did often. This one might actually be unkillable. Jake paused, looking directly into the holo display with an expression that was equal parts confidence and absolutely unhinged determination. Director, with all due respect, that's what they said about Noodle. And now he's registered as an emotional support animal and knows 3 different fetch games. Nothing's unkillable. Some things just haven't met the right person yet. You're insane. Yeah, but I'm really good at my job. Jake threw his bag over his shoulder. Come on, Noodle. We've got a star-eating cosmic horror to go make friends with. This is gonna be fun. Noodle uncurled his massive form, making that happy rumbling sound again. The dimensional habitat rippled around them as they prepared to leave. Also, Jake added, when I succeed, and I will succeed, I'm taking a full month off. Non-negotiable. Noodle and I are going to that beach planet in the Andromeda sector. The one with the bioluminescent waves. We're overdue for a proper vacation. The Parliament of Andromeda will never allow. They'll get over it. Everyone does eventually. Jake winked. See you in a few weeks, Director. Try not to panic while I'm gone. It's bad for your health. The transmission ended. Thornback sat alone in his office, surrounded by paperwork, listening to the sound of his own stress-clicking claws, and contemplated the bizarre reality he now inhabited. A reality where the solution to unkillable cosmic horrors was apparently a human in cargo shorts, with no sense of self-preservation and an inexplicable gift for making friends with things that could unmake reality. His assistant appeared in the doorway again. Sir, the betting pools have started. Current odds on Jake's survival are 60-40 in favor. Bet everything I have on him succeeding, Thornback said. At this point, I'm convinced Reynolds could befriend the heat death of the universe if given enough time and selenium composite. That's not scientifically... I don't care about scientifically possible. Anymore, Thornback interrupted. Jake Reynolds has broken my understanding of what's possible. Just place the bet. 3 sectors away, Jake and Noodle were already en route to the Terminus sector. Jake was reviewing sensor data while Noodle floated alongside the shuttle, occasionally doing loop-de-loops in the vacuum of space because Jake had told him it was okay to have fun during travel time. Pip, who had been voluntarily reinstated as Jake's handler because apparently Stockholm Syndrome was a thing, was frantically researching star-eating entities and muttering about updating his will. So, Pip said, trying to sound calm and failing completely. What's the plan for this one? Jake looked at the sensor data showing the devourer of stars, a writhing mass of dark energy that consumed everything it touched, that bent spacetime around it like paper, that was literally eating the fundamental fabric of reality itself. He grinned. Same as always, Pip. We're gonna walk up to it, figure out what its problem is, and make a new friend. How hard could it be? Pip made a sound that was somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Noodle rumbled happily, excited, for the adventure. And somewhere in the Terminus sector, the devourer of stars continued its inexorable consumption of reality, completely unaware that it was about to have the strangest, most inconvenient encounter of its incomprehensibly vast existence. The universe, it seemed, wasn't ready for Jake Reynolds. But then again, nothing ever really was.